I'm enjoying it because I'm reliving that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting some thought in, and the last few nights I haven't slept well because I've been planning what I'm going to say all night long.
You were reminiscing.
In 1960, this was still McLeod Road, but in town, when you were at corner Highland Avenue and so on, when you're going into town on Regent now, there's McLeod Street there. They couldn't have two of the same names. Mm-hmm. So what are we going to do here? Well, my dad was always kind of a leader in this type of thing. He said, Jerry Walford's been here as the principal and teacher in this school from day one. Why don't we just name the school, the road, Walford Road? And that's how it got its name, Walford Road.
Perfect.
Now, the school was McLeod Road School up until then. So when they changed the name to Walford Road, they always just called it McLeod School.
And Mickey went to this school.
I was here for 7 years. They thought I had an inside story of, in grade 1 I was late over 200 times. And I don't mean a few minutes late. I'd come in at recess time in the morning and in the afternoon and get to school. And nobody ever said anything, but they put me in grade 3 the next year. I never missed school again. Anyway, across the street here behind us, that was all swamp. There was nothing there but swamp, except a little area down at the corner of the street down here. There was we had an outdoor rink and the ball field in the summertime. I think later on they had those. So they provided another recreation facility out here. It was a pretty rough area, and it was an outdoor rink. It was. I played goalie for 2 games, froze my toes the second game, and never played again.
So there's the little stream going from Lake.
There's a little stream coming out here. We'll cross it coming out of. We call it Trout Lake. The proper name for it is Napahwin Lake.
Okay.
And when I was growing up, this was Trout Lake we lived in. They ran a regular bus service out here, quite good. Every hour, 10 minutes after the hour, the bus left downtown, came out here and took a loop around and went back to town. And with that, they went to...
Shut the motor off.
I got to put... They had to shut the... or what was I going to say? They called it the bus coming to Trout Lake, and everybody called this place Trout Lake at that time. It was never called Lockerbie at that time. It was after amalgamation that the name Lockerbie area came into really being. Although I think it always was Lockerbie.
So was Lockerbie School there already or not yet? Lockerbie School.
No, the Lockerbie high school.
Yeah.
No, there was nothing there but swamp out on this side.
Right, yeah.
And it was I would say, the 1950s that the school was built and the apartment buildings started getting put up in there, and they filled in some of the swamp and so on. Were able to make use of the land. But it was still the 1950s. It was just an unused swamp.
Who owned it?
Andy Boyce.
So he would have...
He owned all the property right up to Walford Road. That was from over the hill. Like this. We're just over the hill from where you live.
Right.
And he owned all that property. So that was all his land that he sold to people for and made money on the way. And they had... So anyway,
people then went to high school.
Back behind us, a few doors, is St. Mark's United Church.
Right.
And it was the only church out here at that time. I don't think there was any other church in Lockerbie. But it was a church. All my friends and I all went to that church. We had young people's clubs. We had Sunday school. We had a basketball league. That was very important. And my mother was Lutheran. She wanted me to get communication and communicated at the Lutheran Church up in St. Matthew's in Sudbury. And so I agreed on one condition, that once I finished that, I would transfer my membership here to St. Mark's. Mm-hmm. And we had a great minister here, Russell Horsburgh. But I think Catherine, you had two places you had to go in, Levack and Dowling. He had 4. Mm-hmm. He went to Creighton, and on Sunday morning he'd preach early in the morning in Creighton, which was a village that doesn't exist anymore, about by Lively. Then he came to Gatchell, then he came here, and in the evening he went to Middle Lake. But he was a different minister for those days. You know, in the 40s and so on, I think most of the ministers spent most of their time with the adults of the church. He was a young people's minister. And it got him into trouble eventually along the way. We're doing that. But in the meantime, he was leadering, not getting us to do all these things. And I know my 3 best friends and I, among others, who went to this church, it was quite interesting because 2 of them became United Church ministers. The other one became a doctor, a medical doctor, and I became a school principal. So we all survived pretty well from it. And so that was it as far as the facilities are concerned. St. Mark's grew as it went along. I can remember the place was full all the time, but especially at Easter and Christmas, of course. We
So
really
Mickey,
get
at
full.
this point in time, if you were at high school age, you had to go to the city.
Oh yeah, you know, as far as after we left here, Lockerbie School wasn't here, and there were only 2 high schools in Sudbury: Sudbury Mining and Technical School and Sudbury High School. And today there are 1 school, Sudbury Secondary, but they were all on the same property. We used to go by bus into town to the school there for all through high school, and even my sister, who finished high school in the late 50s. She never went to this school. She went to another school for high school education. So that was a lot of growth took place. This whole area with the school, we called the area around the outside the block, and the bus would come out up to the corner of Walford and Paris Street, and turn in there, go around here, come back to there and into Sudbury every hour, and from 10 after 6 in the morning till 10 after 1 the following morning. That bus was traveled that route. And it was good bus service we had. And most people didn't have cars, so the buses were full. It was interesting. We had a lot of fun out here. I loved growing up in this place, just like I loved raising my kids in Onaping.
Any stores?
Yeah, I'll show you. There were a few little grocery stores, and we'll go past their locations in a little while.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to take us on a little ride.
It's very noisy.
So anyway, with this school, I forgot an important part here. In the early 1950s, there was a 10-room school. When I came, they put another 8 rooms onto it. And in that new addition, it was fall, and they put some heaters inside the addition to keep it warm at night. And it caught fire and burned the whole thing down. The school was completely destroyed.
Really?
And so then they rebuilt the school, and they built it this way on the hill here. That was McLeod School number 2. And it was that way until I don't know, late 1980s, even the 90s, maybe later than that, because it would be into the 2000s. They tore down that school and built this one that's here
I
now.
think this one was built since we moved here in 2006.
Yeah, that's it. It's new.
Yeah.
That's right. It was. I couldn't.
I remember seeing the old one and then knowing when this
Yeah.
one.
So this is the newest one.
It's lovely.
And interesting enough, I had grandchildren who went to this school.
So our grandchildren went to this school a little bit too, although they homeschooled a lot. So,
Okay.
but Ella and Alex each did a year, and then Ella did her grade 8 year here a couple of years last
Okay.
year. She's in Lockerbie now.
Okay. Anyway, this is it's quite a building now. It's pretty nice, but it was interesting. The front entrance to the original school was right onto the road. You know,
Was it brick then?
was it what?
Brick?
No, I think it was wooden.
Totally.
It was a wooden structure.
So you talk about the bus doing a loop around the school. So there's no road through to go back to Paris now, but it was just around this school area. Basically.
Around the block was all the way down here to what's Regent Street.
Okay.
All the way up where Paris and Regent meet,
Okay.
and then back in
The
on
loop that
Paris
way.
Street.
Okay.
Now, it wasn't Regent Street in those days.
Right.
It was McFarland Lake Road, and because it went past the Four Corners and out toward McFarland Lake. Another interesting thing happened before, in the early 1950s, they built this highway coming through here, going into Sudbury from Toronto. Now, up until that time, if you wanted to go to Toronto, you had to go by North Bay and down Highway 11. There was no direct route from Sudbury to Toronto.
Okay.
And even in the early 50s, when they first built this, Highway 69 only went as far as MacTier. And then you had to cut across to Highway 11 at Gravenhurst and go the rest of the way down to Toronto.
Right.
So it was much later than that. At first, we were isolated up here in that direction. You had to go to North Bay. Now, interesting enough, when we get over to the other side, I'll tell you the stories about the Caswell Hotel and where we lived. But it was some interesting stuff happened there too.
Good.
Anyway, if we get to a point where you think I'm talking too much or you're getting tired, tell me to stop and we'll move on to something else.
No, actually, it's really interesting.
Anyway, this, as I said to Lauren a while ago, he asked me where did Beverly Street come from. A person by the name of Andy Boyce owned all this land. And I know he had a barn and farm, but I don't know if he farmed anything in my lifetime anyway. And he named this street after one of his daughters, Beverly.
Mickey, did you not say he raised cows and had the milk?
No, that's Michelle's farm.
Oh, Michelle, because
No.
it's around here too somewhere.
Now, the
This is our daughter's house.
Beverly Street at first had two houses on it. Down by the corner here. One was Andy Boyce's house, and then Andy Boyce built a second house for some of his older children when they got married. So there was nothing along here except this. I would think it would be the third house and the first one. The middle one wasn't there. Those were the first two houses on the street.
Okay.
And then Andy owned the land on the other side of Martindale here as well, on both sides of Lily Creek.
I'm fine.
And
I tend to be warm.
back
so
in the
it cools
1940s, there were houses along for a little way. Southview Drive went up this way, not maybe 10, 12 houses, and that was all there was of it. And then there were houses on the other side of the creek as well that were all on Andy Boyce's land. But this road stopped, and there was nothing out here at Robinson subdivision and so on. That was just
I didn't get a chance.
bushland for until probably the 1950s, maybe the early 60s even, before any started being built out here. So back in the 40s, none of these houses were here.
Right.
The road stopped before we got this far.
Are you hearing Mickey?
Now I'm going to take us around to Bouchard Street by where Gloria's restaurant is. And the Bouchard Street stopped at the creek as well. You couldn't get across the creek by car.
Mick, can you speak a little louder if you can?
Okay,
Yeah, that's better.
I can.
So Martindale was not there?
What's that?
Martindale was a later addition?
Martindale Road?
Yes.
No, Martindale Road was always there.
Okay.
And it was always called Martindale Road. The name never changed. From way back in the, probably from the time it was first built, it was always Martindale Road. And then we come to this corner now, of course you can cross onto Bouchard Street here. And the creek, there was no bridge here. There was a creek ran through here. We used to swim there in the springtime before the lake got warm enough.
Really?
And this was the area right here.
What were you saying, Mickey?
This is just beside the bridge that we're on right now. Was where Ludger Michel, who owned this farmland, had his barn, and he kept dairy cattle. I know that much, and the reason he did that was because his brother-in-law owned a dairy in Sudbury, and he supplied the milk for the dairy. and did that. And there were only a few houses along here. I think 2 houses on this side. They belonged to Ludger Missell. He rented them to people. And he himself and his family. I just want to see which house. No, it's not that one. They lived. This is the old Michelle homestead right here. Still exists.
That one over there.
This one right here across from us.
Right.
That was where all the family grew up. And so then what they did in the early 1950s was Arnold built this restaurant and 2 apartments above it, and named the restaurant Gloria's, and his sister Gloria ran the restaurant. Now before that time, this area here was our ball field. There was no backstops, nothing else, but we'd actually had a ball field here that people played ball on, and we played football here and everything else until this building was put up. And by then, of course, most of us grown up.
Go out there, dear.
Anyway, this was.
left turn. That's all. You can go out here if you go this way.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh, can you?
You can go that way. You just can't go
Yeah,
that way.
I'm going to go left here. So that was our ball field. We had friends who lived all around here, and we were all good buddies in those days.
So how close to here did you live, Mickey?
I'm going to show you. It's up that way.
Okay, we'll see it.
Across from where it's the Holiday Inn, they call it now.
Okay. I know where the Holiday Inn
It
is.
was originally the Caswell Hotel. Anyway, there was only a few houses along here, no businesses, no apartment buildings. It was all a pretty small area. And
And this road, of course,
this
wasn't there.
now Walford Road
This
was not called Walford Road in
Mickey, this
1940.
road wasn't here that we're driving on.
What?
This road that we're
Up,
driving on.
as far as this corner it was. That stopped here. There was nothing across the way. It came to this corner.
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah,
there
it came to this corner, and this was McLeod Road. And I'm going to go down. I'm going to park in the schoolyard down here, talk a little bit about what happened here over the years. The first school built here was built in 1935, and that year, the principal, teacher, it was one-room school, and a man by the name of Jerry Wolford came in to be the teacher and principal of that school. And so anyway, the school at that time was right down to the road. It came right down to the roadside here, and ran from the road back. So there was a playground on both sides of the school.
Nice.
And by the time I started school here in 1941, there were 10 rooms here, and Jerry Walford was still the principal. Anyway, one of the problems he had here, the city of Sudbury was completely hemmed in by McKim Township around them. Gatchell, Lockerbie, Minnow Lake, New Sudbury. City of Sudbury couldn't grow. So in 1960, they annexed all of McKim Township. And this became part of the city of Sudbury. And there was a little farm on the corner here.
Yeah. So did Don Ray's mom. I was trying to remember Don Ray's mom's name.
This was the second route into Sudbury, was here, going down with Paris Street, but it didn't follow this route. The road curved around and went by up around the parking lot of the hospital, and curved around through there, and then went around the hill. But this stretch of road along here, this area, was it was a frontier town in the 40s, and this area, this group along here, there was half the houses were bootleggers, and the other half were houses of ill repute. It wasn't a really nice area. But that's I can remember going to church on Sunday morning with my wife, or with my mother, and the houses that were along here, and the houses that were on here were where the street is now, because the street was back this way, and we would. There'd be chairs all over the lawns and everything else. I guess been some good brawls going on the night before, Saturday night.
Attention to the road, dear.
And none of this was here. It was all swamp.
Oh, swamp, yeah.
And why did they call it Paris?
It was Paris Street in Sudbury, and when they got rid of this being Trout Lake Road, they just extended and called it Paris Street all the way through.
Okay.
The same thing with Regent Street. It was in downtown in Sudbury already. When the highway got built, they just named it all Regent Street. Yeah, this corner where Science North is, that was one of the biggest houses of ill repute was there. It was known as the Blue Lantern.
Does mean
I remember I used to help deliver milk in there, and I was not very happy going into that building. One little thing I want to show you up this way. So there was nothing on this side of the street. That was all empty land. No hospital or anything. It was all here, all gone, not here. There was only one place, Bell Grove, over on this side. It was still an area of this. Bell Grove was here for years as a place where people came and swam and so on. And people started complaining about the mayor being out there in the nude. The only thing here was the Idlewild Golf Course existed here for a long time, and the Idlewild Golf Course had their clubhouse right here by the side of the road. Back in this beautiful colonial type of house that was building. It was right in here. It's where part of the golf course exists now, right in this area. And unfortunately, back in the early 1960s, it caught fire and burned down. So then the Idlewild expanded this. There was only 9 holes. They expanded it to 18 holes and built a new clubhouse over on Walford Road. On the other side, we'd go around to that.
Are we turning around?
Yeah.
I guess we are.
So we've biked out here to the
Oh,
university.
that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah.
My biking days are over. I got rid of my bike about 2 years ago.
So again, who owns this land or owned?
To help
You
us
know,
on the hills.
I think at that
Mickey,
time
are
the
you
Idlewild
parked-
Golf
is parked
Course,
in the middle of the road?
which was something put together by International Nickel Company, they paid for it.
Oh, really?
So the golf course owned the land.
I don't want that to be on
They
this.
had a friend of mine. Their father was a greenskeeper, and he had the only house on this side of Trout Lake Road. He lived along the way here, by where the hospital is now. And there was no other houses on this side of the street.
So I missed the story about the mayor. Could you tell me that one again?
he was a great mayor. He particularly liked the Finnish people. He liked to associate with them. Of course, the Finns had a reputation of going into their saunas nude and then jumping in the lake.
Right.
Well, he was on this side of the lake, and I guess somebody with a pair of binoculars on the other side of the lake saw him and complained about the mayor running around naked.
But that's so far away across the lake.
Yeah, it was. And you know, Bill Beaton wouldn't care 2 hoots anyway.
Mickey, you never did say, but the large majority of people living down where you were living were Finnish, right?
There were, I would say that over half the people living out in this area when I was growing up were Finns. Yeah. So I'm going to take us up the other end of Walford Road now. And
Mickey was
the area we used to, I learned how to play golf
his father was Swedish. That's
on the Idlewild course. It had 3 holes that you couldn't see from the clubhouse. And as kids, we used to sneak out there and play on the golf on those 3 holes. watch and see if it was all clear. We'd go go out again and play some more. And but there were only a few houses along here. Nothing on this side because it was all golf course property. The Idlewild Golf Course eventually started selling lots because they needed the money. You know, they couldn't afford to maintain all the property, so they got sold lots on this side of the road.
Well, was it separate from Inco at that stage?
The what?
Was it separate from Inco?
It was owned by the membership by that time.
Okay.
But Inco had certainly put a lot of money into it in the first instance, and most of the first members were the top level people at Inco. It was a rather exclusive club, still is in many ways. In fact, our daughter Laura says she doesn't even want to go golfing there. She says they're all so snooty. But this road came up here and came to an end, and next to it is Napahwin Road, and it came to an end out there. The two of them, many years ago, were not joined at all. They were separate roads running up along here, and this one ran along. The golf course is right in behind us here.
Right.
And this is the clubhouse that they built. He is pretty busy. But they have a curling club here in the wintertime as well. A lot of big houses along here now. You know, there weren't very many houses at all. There weren't very many houses at all. I love this backup camera. My head doesn't want to turn around too much anymore.
Yeah, that is a good one.
I know there's a Canada goose in that water right across from me.
There's a we see that.
So
one
what lake is that?
That's,
My daughter
we used to call it Trout Lake, and
That
the proper
was-
name is Napahwin Lake. I think.
Okay.
And they did join the two streets eventually, so Walford Road joins into Napahwin. Now, when we first moved out to Lockerbie, I was 3 years old in 1939, and we lived along this on this road. And I'll get to some place where we get a better view of where we lived, because all you can see is houses now. Before you could see the lake from here. But we lived in a couple of different locations here until my parents bought a house in 1941 on McFarland Lake Road, which is now Regent Street.
What was your dad doing?
My dad he built houses.
Oh.
But tell him what your dad did.
My dad, I always teased him a little bit about his past. He was a Baptist minister in Finland, and he ran into some trouble. He misbehaved himself and got defrocked and thrown out of the church. And he came to Canada, and when he came to Canada, he started into the construction business and building houses. So I always used to tease him and said he did it backwards from a fellow 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
He was a preacher first and a carpenter second.
So were you born in Canada, Mickey?
No, both my parents were born in Finland.
Okay, but you were born in Canada.
I was born in Montreal, actually.
Okay.
I was 1 year old when we moved up here. But my mother died in 1951. I was not quite 15 years old yet. And at that time, I figured my family was made up of my dad, my sister, and I. And it was only 20 years later I found out that I had 2 half-sisters and a whole bunch of nieces and nephews and everything else over in Sweden. He had been married before when he was over there. It was right along here that we used to live. But you could see the lake. There was only one row of houses, not 2 or 3 rows like there are now.
So you were right on the lake then?
We were already on the lake when we lived here, yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, was your dad well off because of building houses, or?
No, he never did get to be well off. He lived, he survived all right. He did build a lot of buildings. This building across the street was one that he built. And on this corner, on this side, was one of our grocery stores.
And you said when this road came through here, he had to move a lot of houses
Well, that was on the highway, the other side.
on the other side, on the
Yeah.
region. Okay.
Yeah, when they started building Highway 69, and he would put houses on floats and had a new basement built for them. They put them on the float in the morning, and in the evening, people were in their new location. Never had to take a dish out of their cupboards or anything else.
Really?
This corner with this big apartment building on it used to be owned by a Finnish friend of ours, and he ran a sauna business down the shore. Where are we? But this was another street that had the same name as a street in Sudbury, and I would think it was Ethel Street. And
It's amazing all the streets that are named after people, huh?
yes, lots of them. Well, in downtown Sudbury, I don't know if you're aware, and it's Indian Road now. In downtown Sudbury, the streets running one way, like Lawrence Street, Elgin, Durham, are all named after old Governor Generals of Canada. And the streets running the other direction are named after trees.
Yeah.
Elm, cedar, larch.
Yeah, that was interesting. This house right in here, when I had a picture a friend of ours sent up to us, when it was my sister and I and a bunch of others, it was the girl's 10th birthday party. We're all sitting on those steps, picture taken of that. But on the other side, there's a little bay of the lake that runs through, and that's where the creek that runs out of Trout Lake
Oh, yes.
runs out to and joins Lily Creek down by the Science North. Well, there were a few houses here, nothing much else. It was all little bits of land.
Really a nice little neighborhood.
Yeah. And the same thing on the other side of the street, there was nothing there. We used to come down. The mail was at that grocery store that was down here that I showed you at that corner. Right? We had a trail over the hills and through the bush from the other side where we lived, and I'd cover the mail and we'd walk back rather than have to go all the way around. We'd go through the trail
Nice.
until you get back. Now this building you can see over on that side was another place that we lived, but that was much later, after I came back from Teachers College, and my sister was still here, and my dad was working in Espanola half the time. We rented an apartment in that building for a year before Bunny and I got married.
Oh, just got
We were going to be 65 years married in August. I'm going to go in here. This building that's here used to be Joan's Ice House.
Mhm.
And not the same building, of course. And in that building, in the wintertime, this is where you come to go swimming.
This is where we come, yes.
I can tell you a story about it. Right? Napahwin Park, it's called now. Anyway, where that building is, the nice house, and in the wintertime, they would go out and cut ice in the middle of the lake, and had a trench running through, and guys with pike poles would push the ice through, conveyor belt took it into the ice house, and other people covered it with sawdust in there, and the majority of people who didn't have any, we didn't have refrigerators, we used ice to keep things cold in the summertime. The iceman came around every couple of days with a big block of ice and put it in our ice box, and that was done for many years. Now then, this place here, the Finnish community was broken into two parts, the red Finns and white Finns.
Okay, yes.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the red-white situation, basically pro-communist and democratic people. This place was owned by one of the Finnish groups. Actually, the red Finns owned this place, and they called this place in Finnish Työn Puisto. Translated literally means work park, and they were the workers group that they were hitting on. So they built this place here. I just going to go over on that deck over there and stop there. And
Yeah.
they had it as parkland here.
Oh,
They had
okay.
it. They had a hall here where they served food and so on. I remember they had outside the hall. They had a croquet court and a lawn, and they let us play every once in a while. And then over here there was a sauna on here, and we're on the side of that where the green is, plus some change rooms. And then out in that rock there was a tower, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, and an arch on top of it. And you had felt you'd gotten to the bottom of things, but I don't know how we did it. We climbed up on top of that arch and jumped from 40 feet up in the air into the water. But the third level was quite common. We have no problem with that. But some guys went up there quite regularly up in that arch. But there was lots of water, no problem. And I never remember anybody getting hurt. And today you wouldn't have something like that. The liability situation would be unreal.
Well,
But there was no lifeguards or anything else. It was just a bunch of kids having fun. In 1939, when we moved out here, we spent the summer living in a little cabin on that point that you can see across here. That was our first place that we lived in. But we couldn't live there in the winter time, and the people who owned it, they had an apartment upstairs in their house, and we lived there in the winter for a year or so. Then we moved a little further down the lake for a year, and after that we moved over to the house we'll show you later, which isn't there anymore. But my dad used to fish here. Great fun being here.
it would have been special, right by a lake like that.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And again, I was able to come out, when we lived over there, I had a shortcut across to get over here without any trouble.
So what did the Finns do? They came to Canada as loggers, basically.
They what?
They came to Canada as lumber people.
A lot of them is lumber people, yeah. They were also, a lot of them were farmers. And in Finland, the farmland was pretty marginal land.
Yeah.
And it seemed the Finns had a knack for starting their farms here on the same type of marginal land. And of course, they came to this area. When I went to Finland, I said, the only place I've ever seen birch trees like we have here. Finland's got all kinds of them. I think they felt right at home here when they came to this part of the country.
Right. Makes sense.
So that was a lot of them. A lot of them did farming as well. But a lot of them got in the construction business. As carpenters, and there's some plumbers and electricians, and they learned their trade as they went along.
How about mining? Did they get into that?
Most of them worked in the mines to start with. That's what brought them here. They had, I know my dad came up here shortly after I was born. He came up because there was lots of work at the mines. And he worked there for about 4 or 5 years, and then he didn't like it, got into some other things, and eventually construction.
So was he underground, or?
He was underground. Yeah, he was a hard rock miner. Fortunately, I never had to do it. I've been underground, and I said, I'm ever glad I don't have to work here.
Yeah.
Talk about going to church at the time when we were growing up. Every Holy Week, St. Andrew's United Church got a well-known preacher to come to Sudbury to preach. They started out preaching Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And on Monday, the church, my 3 buddies and I were in St. Andrew's, a little balcony just over the pulpit. We had the front row seat there on Monday, and we were there every day till Friday, and we had the same seats. And by Friday, you couldn't get into the church. The word spread about this great speaker, and every year there's somebody there. It was interesting. One of the ones I remember was called Norman Rawson. And when I went to McGill in Montreal, I went to County United Church and stepped in, and sure enough, it wasn't Norman Rawson was the minister of that church.
So you went to McGill.
I was there for a year. I was in chemical engineering, and I just didn't cut it for me. So I went to Queen's and tried chemistry and mathematics, and that was no good. So I went. A buddy of mine says, "I know what I'm doing next year. I'm going to teachers' college." I said, "Well, that's a good way to stay warm another winter."
Yeah.
I went there. That was where I belonged. I could handle that job very well. I'm going to move over to this side
Sorry.
more. Yeah, that became my career. And interesting enough, in another month, I'll be retired 33 years, and I worked for 33 years.
That's a good career.
Yeah. This is another one of these streets that had a few houses on it. That's not the case anymore.
Okay,
They're
yeah.
2 and 3 deep.
Beautiful units. And she was right on the water.
You can see a little bit of the other side of the lake.
Oh, right.
We'll see. I should see it better up further.
So I've definitely never been here before.
Must have been tough to put the sewers and stuff in here.
Oh, lots of drilling.
Yeah.
So Mickey, was this all farmland too?
No, this was just a narrow peninsula. The lake's on both sides here.
Okay. Did you swim in this lake, Mick?
Oh yeah, lots. I was about 3 or 4 years old, so I'd go out to the end of the dock and dive in and swim underwater until I could touch bottom. But when I was growing up, this was the top of the hill here was the end of this road. It was all wild growth. We used to walk out to the end on the trail. It was a nice beach down at the end. But now, as you'll see, there's some pretty big houses built back in here.
Yeah.
You used to be able to come up here. When you walked up, you could see the lake on both sides. They kind of fixed that up. Get a kick out of, a lot of these big houses people are building. Their kids are all grown up and there's only 2 people living in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too much money, they don't know what to do with it.
How do they make the money?
Well, lots of them are probably in business of some kind. Most of these people were entrepreneurs of some kind or other. There.
You want me to call her? So she said, oh, well, she didn't buy a house, she bought a condo. She's gonna find a spot.
So, was this area affected by the mines, like the Sudbury's Black Rock, when you were growing up?
Not badly, but there was some. I can certainly remember many days when I was growing up when there was a thick ball of good sulfur in the air around here, and it got less and less as we went along. The interesting part was the winds blowing it around were usually westerly winds, and the back on it, we never got any of it.
Right.
That's why it's so nice and green up there.
So, were there big trees killed here? Like,
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I've seen stumps in the woods on the other side where they were
So
3
there's
and 4 feet
another
across.
church building in front of us now.
That's the old church building.
Yeah, you were.
you can tell by the cross, all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was an
shaped
Anglican
like the
church.
doors.
That's the one. Backwards. If I'd have gone the other way around, I could make all right turns.
Yeah. Might have been easier.
Now this, it's called Rumball Terrace, and it's geared to income accommodations. But it used to be all owned by a fellow called Jack Rumball, and he had about 20 houses there. I don't know if they had water or anything in them. Rented them all to people. And for a number of years, that was what it was there. And there's another street that goes up here where I had a friend of mine lived down at the bottom of the lake, and that was where he and I used to go swimming. We were 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and we were down at the lake all day long swimming. Nobody else down there, no supervision. There was an island which I realized later when I got a little older. It wasn't that far away. It was maybe 50 yards from shore. And we'd swim across that island. No life jackets or anything. Now, this is where the highway came in. And before the highway came in, you could only go. This was called the Boorwash Road, and it went as far as the Boorwash Industrial Farm. That was the end of it, which is about 20, 25, 30 kilometers down the road.
And it just stopped there.
What's that?
And it just stopped there.
Just
That
stopped
was
there.
all-
That was the end.
So that was the prison farm.
Yeah, that's as far as the road went. No, there was nothing on this side of the road either. This side, there was nothing there. It was all wild land. And this road going to the right, that was the old Boorwash Road, went around that way.
And what was this bare rock at that stage?
It was basically bare rock, and I guess there were trees growing on it.
Okay.
But it was, no, there were trees, not big trees, but there were trees growing on it. But certainly not any human habitation or anything. And this area to the left, again, still down here, was all a little farm. It was the third farm out in this area. And it was owned by the Loaches. And that's why it's called Loaches Road. I never came up here in those days. There was no reason to come up. And they, in the late 40s and early 50s, they started building houses out here, just up this first street. I remember there was at least 2 or 3 houses there that my dad looked after building.
So why do they call it the Four Corners?
Well, it's always had 4 corners here. By the way, there was another grocery store on this corner. The road's going in 4 ways, and it got called Four Corners long as I've known it, and it never lost that name.
Yeah.
But there was a grocery store owned by Jim Hanrahan right on that corner. And of course, there was nothing on this side of the street. Few houses on this side.
So you said at some point this was the Caswell Inn or something?
Yeah, it was 1 story. This end here, the first story there, the middle part, and the same as this on the other end. And the other end was, it wasn't rooms, it was strictly a beer parlor.
So was it here when you lived here as a
Well,
child,
yeah,
as an inn of some sort, or that was later?
Yeah, we moved in here in 1941, and our house was on a hill right in behind the deluxe hamburger place.
Oh.
And it's gone now. It's been torn. Yeah, it's been torn down. It doesn't exist anymore. And we had we had an outhouse and carried our water in out of a well. And there was no indoor plumbing or anything else in that house. I got that. Anyway, at the same time, 1941, around that area, all the property from there up to the entry to Moonglow subdivision came up for sale. And my parents agonized for ages if they should buy it or not. And finally they did. Mm-hmm. They paid $125 for it.
$125.
Yeah. Now, if I had that property today, it would be worth millions, because right on the highway here for that, but no, and it went long ago. Anyway, in 1951, I think I mentioned earlier, my mother died in that, and my sister and I went and spent the summer with some friends of hers in Sherbrooke, Quebec. And when we came back, my dad had started building this house right across the street, which is now looks like it needs to be torn down too. But that house, that fall, I was 15 years old the first time. I had indoor plumbing, running water. I was in heaven.
So you
that
lived
was
in that
your
house
house.
then?
Yes.
What's that?
That was your house.
Oh yeah, till the
We should take a picture of that, Mickey.
late
I guess we don't
50s or
really
so.
want a picture.
I really don't want a picture of that now. It
But
looked
you
a
didn't
mess.
mention that this is what your father built behind it.
Yeah,
Did you
the
know
garage wasn't there at all. It was just
the
a house.
hotel?
Yeah.
His father built the hotel.
Yeah, Mickey, you did say that.
So, so anyway,
But I didn't
in the early 1950s, about the same time as they built that house, the highway was coming through, and Dalton Caswell was a hotel man. He owned a hotel in Timmins, or he rented one, leased one there, and he had a hotel in Sundridge. And he wanted to build a hotel here because he knew the highway was coming. He was a good conservative. He had inside information. So but he needed money, and it was interesting in part. He picked this area because he had 3 brothers and a brother-in-law who were prominent citizens of Sudbury, who could get him money. So they drew up the plans, had the hotel, and hired my dad as a general foreman, and he was a general foreman for the original building here, and a lot of the planning was done right in that house.
Wow.
And so that was. The interesting parts of it that came in there. I worked at the hotel all years along the way. I started out parking cars, and then I would eventually I worked as a waiter in the bar in there eventually, and I did all different things to keep me busy.
Yeah, and it was so handy.
It was handy, yeah. So anyway,
so
that was
Mickey walked from here to this little school.
Now,
which is that big school
yeah.
now.
I went from here to McLeod School. That was, it was about a mile walk, I guess.
Right. So how old were you when you moved here?
15.
Okay.
And the interesting part, the road from here was 2 lanes down here. And when it really snowed heavily in the wintertime, from down here by that apartment building all the way to Gloria's restaurant, they didn't plow it. It was never plowed in the wintertime. But,
Well, you said most people didn't have vehicles.
well, that's right. And there was no houses. That subdivision all grew up in the 50s.
Right.
And Mickey, you said all this area behind?
Oh yeah. Behind here, have you been through that area, Moonglow subdivision?
Yes.
And all those big houses, that was my playground when I was growing up. And we'd have trails through the bush and go out to St. Charles Lake and swim there and have picnics and so on out at the lake. And it was here that in this house over here that my dad used to sit at the back door with his gun and his coffee on Sunday morning and shoot partridge out of our little grey water place we had in the backyard. He didn't even have to get up out of his seat.
So how much of this land did he own?
Oh, just back maybe 100, 200 feet, not far back. And by the way, the rest of that land up there was all owned by the Michels. That was part of their farm. They made. I can remember talking to Jerry Michel, one of the boys. He was the one who got more education, and he became a lawyer and a judge eventually in Sudbury. I was on the plane with him one time, and he said, we just opened up 100 new lots up there. It cost us $60,000 a lot, he said, to put in the services and everything else in the road. And I said, what'd you sell them for? $70,000. I said, in my humble mind, that comes to $1 million profit. I don't feel sorry for you. Okay, he says. Anyway, that...
So the land that you were saying that your father bought for 125 was from where to where?
right from
Where your
where the
house
deluxe
was?
drive-in was
Yeah.
to the entry to Moonglow subdivision. Now, we built this house here. There was another house we sold a lot for that was built between here and Moonglow subdivision that has been long since torn down. And there was a sign on that for many years wanting to sell that property. And I wanted to, I never did call the real estate company to find out how much they wanted for it.
Anyway,
I should have.
What did you say your parents sold all that property for?
Well, we probably sold the house there for $4,000 or $5,000 in 1950. maybe got 25,000 in 1960 for this one.
I mean the land.
And the other lot we sold for about 600 or 700. That was it.
The lots.
Yeah.
Well, I thought the whole thing was sold for 500.
No. We just sold that lot and we built a house here and we owned the rest. But this was all hills here, like where Enterprise is. They had to drill all the rock out of there to make that area that is existing in. And back in behind there, I had two rocks went back like this and had a big space between them. And I used to build a roof on it all the time. It was my cave hideout.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably still there. I can't get there. Yeah.
That's the unique thing about this town is the way the rocks have created the back areas.
Yeah.
And you'll see whole houses or apartment buildings built on
Just
places you never believed they'd do.
Solid. They're not going anywhere.
No.
Some of our friends that have never been.
Look at the Science North. Science North is built all on solid rock.
Yes.
It's all there on solid rock. Yeah, and there's lots of other places the same way. Like I'm sure this big apartment building, the base is on solid rock. So that's my trout lake that I grew up in. I hope I didn't bore you too much with all my
Oh,
yabbering.
not at all. I'm fascinated by it.
Well, I know you always said you were interested in history, and
Yeah.
we got talking and said, I want to see this. I want you to tell me about it. Well, it took a little while. We finally made it.
But there's so much of Sudbury that can still be built on.
Yeah. Well, see, the city of Sudbury itself should not have been built where it was. The reason it got built there was when the railroad came through, the fellow in charge of construction put the railroad station where it is, and the city probably should have been built out in Valley East where there was all kinds of flat land,
Oh, right.
instead of on the piles of rocks. So, there's a reason for everything along the way.
So
Yeah.
there's
You know where you're going, eh?
Do I know where I'm going?
Yeah, you know where they're going.
Yeah. This house here that sells frames and so on, my good buddy lived upstairs in the apartment for a while. And he, up in the top window in there, his bedroom, he and I used to have some terribly competitive hockey matches on hockey game boards.
I've had cabinets for them.
When we were kids, the night before Halloween, the neighbor's pastime was tipping over outhouses.
Really?
Oh yeah. And anyway, we had this one fella along the way here, was a real miserable character. On Halloween night, he'd never give anything to anybody. One night, he gave somebody a great big bag. Turned out it was garbage. So I think it was the next year. We were out on our usual prowl, and he was in his outhouse.
Yeah.
We said, we're going to get even. We tipped the outhouse over with him inside onto the door
No.
and left them there. LaSalle Boulevard was Falconbridge Road, and the road from Highway 17 up to the corner of LaSalle wasn't there. It didn't exist at all. Now that whole area along there was farms. And in fact, an interesting part there happened in I think it was the late 1940s. They decided to have a Canadian ski jumping championship in Sudbury, and they built the ski jump on the hill where Adenock Ski Hill is now. And my dad actually built the jump, or he was the foreman in charge of building
Really?
it. And the only way that you could get out there, they were downtown where the city center is downtown. There was a CN railroad station there, and you had to take the train, and the train run a shuttle back and forth to the ski hill because there were no roads.
Wow.
So there was nothing there. There was no Barry Down. They call that Marcel Street, and Marcel, I guess. Patient guy behind me wants to go faster. Honking. So Michelle, I thought Andy Boyce owned that side of the creek. No, Michelle had to own that as well because Marcel was one of his sons.
So this is Beverly Drive. Why is it?
Okay, Beverly was one of Andy Boyce's daughters. He named it after his daughter Beverly.
Okay. And Andy owned what?
He was a farmer. He owned this whole property. It was Andy Boyce's farm, the whole area.
What did he farm?
I don't know because there's not much in the way of land. In fact, I don't even remember him really farming in my lifetime. He didn't. So I think it's around the time that in the 40s already he started selling building lots and so on to get people to sell them the houses. He got into real estate on it and kept on doing it. And he did that along with, we'll go over there after, Ludger Michel had another big farm and he owned all piles of land and they made lots of money on real estate, the family.
And the Michelle was the one that owns the hardware store?
Yeah. Yes, they had, Ludger, I think, had about 10 children. And the oldest of the boys was Arnold. And he became quite an entrepreneur. And he decided in the early 1950s to build Gloria's restaurant. And Gloria's restaurant, again, these people use their family names for everything. Gloria ran the restaurant for a number of years, and Gloria was one of Ludger Michel's daughters. And upstairs in that building, there was what do we call it? 2 apartments up, and then we lived up there for a while.
Oh, did you?
Because what happened at that time, I was away at school, and my sister was going away to school, and my dad was spending at that time working between Sudbury and Espanola, so we sold the house and got that apartment to live in up there.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, now it's all offices up there.
all offices and much bigger. The original building was just the size of the restaurant with 2 apartments on top.
Oh, really? Okay.
The rest was all an addition that was put on later. Carved out the rock up on the hill and filled in the swamp area here. And one long weekend they left, went away. When they came back on Tuesday, there was no road there. It all sunk down into muskeg. So they had to start rebuilding it. And what they did up on the hill was cut the rock, cut big enough so that when they went into 4 lanes, they didn't have to cut any more rock to make 4 lanes. But this time it seemed to stay. So that was an interesting story about the disappearing road.
Wow. So, yeah, the whole thing would be muskeg, right?
Yeah, but it was only this part down here, I think, that disappeared.
Right.